At Nostalgic Air Parts, one of the most common things we do is change the rear head of a Sanden style compressor. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to change the head and how to re-add the oil back so you don't deviate the lubrication of the system. To begin, you need to remove the caps off the compressor. If you have a used compressor, you can skip this step. Once you get your caps removed, you're going to need a cup. You want to pour the oil into a cup so you know how much you took out. Just a little red cup. It can be any color. Pour your oil into the cup. Takes a few minutes to get it all out. But once you get it all out, we can begin the process. Now that I have the oil out, we're going to need a 13mm socket. I'm going to remove the bolts with an impact. When I remove the bolts, you can do it in any order. When you're putting it back together is when you have to pay attention to the order. Before you lift the head off, pull all the bolts out. Sometimes they won't unthread all the way, and when we go to lift off, but the oil will go down the sides of the compressor, making a mess. Take a paper towel, have it ready. When you pull your head off, slap it on there. This will ensure no oil runs down the side of the compressor. You want to keep the compressor looking new. If oil gets all over it, it's going to look used. When I pulled the head off, the gasket came with it. Whenever we sell a head for a Sanden style compressor, we give you a new gasket. You don't want to reuse this. It's like wearing old underwear to work. It's just not good. Get rid of it. Underneath the head of that compressor, you have your valve plate. Looks like this. You can't install your head wrong because you have dowel pins on the valve plate and your bolt hole's right under it. This is a valve, bolt hole, etc. When you're putting this head back on, you want to go in a star pattern. If you have 6 bolts like I have here, it's a 7 series compressor. And the star pattern is across, across, and then across. If you have a 5 series compressor, it's going to look like this, and it's the same thing. Here to here, to here, to here, to here. You want to maintain a star pattern. This will ensure that you get the proper torquing of the rear head and not develop any leaks. When you're installing the gasket, you have 2 holes normally on our gaskets. Those 2 holes are going to line up with your oil plug. That's the easiest way to put it on to make sure it's correct. As I said before, as long as you have your dowel pins and your bolt holes lined up, you can't do it incorrectly. Once you have your new gasket on, you have your new head on, make sure there's no oil on the surface of the head, wipe it off. Go ahead and stick the head on, and you begin to tighten it down. To begin, just put all your bolts back in. I'm going to use an impact to get them down. You can use a ratchet, a wrench, it doesn't matter. Just to get them snug, you can use any manner you want. Now that I have the head snug, we're going to use a torque wrench to torque wrench the bolts. This is a very old school torque wrench. I know there's better out there, but it'll work just as well as anything. What you want to do is put your compressor in a vise, or get a friend with big muscles to hold it so you can torque the bolts down properly. I'm not going to torque the whole thing down for demonstrative purposes to keep the video shorter, but when you do it, you want to make your first round at 14 to 17 pounds, and then after that maintain the same pattern and go back to 24 to 27 foot-pounds. You want to make sure you torque the rear head to 24 to 27. If you over-torque your rear head, your steel bolts will pull out the aluminum threads. It's very important you get it to 24 to 27 foot-pounds. You don't have to tug on these things and make it super tight. Once you have your head tight, bolted back on, you can go ahead and pour your oil back into the rear. You want to pour it into the big fitting. The big fitting is going to have an S. If it doesn't have an S, it's going to have an SUC for suction. If they're the same size like this, it'll say SUC. The importance of this is if you put the oil in the small fitting, that's your discharge, and it's just going to shoot the oil out of the compressor. It could starve the compressor for lubrication. So put it in the S side, which is your suction, and it'll suck it in and then back out, and your compressor will be properly lubricated. Just pour your oil back in. After you get it back in, we're going to put our caps back on. We're ready to bolt this onto the vehicle. As you can see, replacing a rear head is very simple. Just a few steps to follow. When you're doing it, you're going to lose a little bit of oil. That's all right. You're not going to lose enough to deviate the system. So don't worry if there's a little left in the cup or whatever. Don't get upset about it. It's going to be okay. Once it's back together, wipe off the excess oil and your compressor is ready to bolt on. If you're worried about oil, we have other videos on how to oil the compressors. If you have any other questions, you know you can